To Amber's direct question, though, are there refugees in Mildura on bridging visas, for example,
Absolutely.
who might be directly affected or indirectly affected by this new proposed rule?
Absolutely, and I think there are people who are genuine refugees who have settled here, family members of those offshore that will be affected. That's a fact.
Are you saying that perhaps people who are already resident of Mildura on a bridging visa may find themselves caught in the net of this new legislation and may therefore have to be forcibly, if that is the right word, I'm not sure, removed from this community? Can you help us?
Well, let's ask Sussan Ley, because, I mean, this was a decision of the Cabinet. You were there when it was made, so what's your view on this?
This is about people who are processed in our offshore centres. At the moment, they are Manus and Nauru, and it is effectively giving a legislative intent to what is policy at the moment, which says if you are processed in one of those offshore centres, you will not come to Australia. Now, that's a policy, as I said, but what we're doing is legislating it. Now, the reason for that is
So can I just quickly come to the question's been asked there and was talked about here. Are there people in Australia who'll be affected by this on bridging visas?
No, because the people who are affected by this are those who are in
I'm going to have
to.
I'm forced to interrupt you. I'm sorry about that, but we put questions to the Minister Peter Dutton today, to his office, on whether people in Australia on bridging visas would be affected by the proposed ban. Their answer came back to us late this afternoon. It's yes. The answer is yes. They couldn't tell us how many, but they said it was a relatively small number. It could be in the hundreds, though.
And the reason for that, Tony, is that they would have been processed in either Manus or Nauru or an offshore processing centre. That's what is being targeted with this legislation. But the wider point that's made by your questioner is about our humanitarian approach. And I want to emphasise that by 2019, we will be accepting 18,750 genuine refugees to this country, as well as the 12,000 Syrian refugees who have been affected so terribly by the war in Syria and Iraq. I, perhaps like Dean, grew up overseas in the Middle East, close to where these refugee camps are. People are waiting patiently in line to come to Australia, and it's very important that we maximise the number of people that we take, as we are with those generous numbers that I said. And we don't just resettle them, Tony.
So I'm going to interrupt you again, because when I initially asked you, would people in Australia be affected, you said no. Is it news to you that some people, we don't know how many, in Australia, as well as those on Nauru and Manus, will be affected by this decision?
There are very few people who have been processed in Manus and Nauru who are now in Australia, Tony. Now, the Minister for Immigration...
Do you know how many?
I don't, but I know the number is few, because the purpose for this legislation is those who are there at the moment, who are being told they're vulnerable, and they're being told by people, smugglers, that all they have to do is wait and government policy will change. So that is the actual reason for this legislation.
So we believe, no one knows the answer to this, and the Minister's office can't tell us, but we believe it's at least around 300, because they're the ones who are subject to the High Court decision.
Well, it is a relatively small number, and let's not overlook the purpose for this, that people are believing the lies that are being told, which is that if you just wait out this government, you will get a migration outcome to Australia. The purpose for this legislation is to make sure that it's very clear. What we want is people in Manus and Nauru to be resettled if they're genuine refugees, or if they're not found to be genuine refugees, to return to their homes, so that we can bring the genuine refugees of whom I spoke, who not only when they come to Australia are accepted, but they're resettled.
Okay, Sussan, we'll come back to you to hear more about this. I want to hear from the other panellists. Stefano, you want to jump in?
Well, it sounds like a fable. You're telling us an amazing story to hide your cruelty. You are cruel. You're now having kept people in a lager, that's how I see it personally, for years and years, having deprived them of their freedom after they've crossed the ocean and be very brave. I haven't got the heart to accommodate them in Australia. Not only that, if you're finding a third place other than Australia, you're going to deny forever their ability to perhaps join with friends and family in Australia. I mean, who invents this cruelty?
Well,
I'll come back to this side of the panel. I'm going to go to this side of the panel and I'll come back to you, and Joel Fitzgibbon.